Hi, good evening, good evening, and welcome to today's class. I think I'm sharing the wrong session because we've not had last week's session. Let me stop sharing now and share our last week session. Okay, let me stop sharing the wrong one. Okay, sorry, I shared the wrong screen initially. I was sharing this supposed to be today's class session. However, yeah, I think this is fine now. We should start in 1 minute or so. If we just allow more people to join before we start. And this, I don't be in this call. Yeah. I am going music here. Please let me know if you can hear me. I am going. Okay, if not I am going, does anyone has his or Nessus running and VM running as well? Like you have the computer already configured. We might need to use your screen because my PC is just hanging and I can't seem to use my PC for today's class. So I'm thinking if anyone has his or test environment configured, then we can use that for today's class. I know of Ayangbemi. Victor, do you have you been able to install your Windows environment and
Wow. Good evening.
Good evening.
For hosting this space. Thanks for all the gems. Thank you so much. Okay, yeah. Well, to be frank, I've been battling with the installation of the Windows system, operating system via the VM. Right. I was just able to get through on it, okay, because I had to change my BIOS configuration file.
Okay, yeah.
Configuration file, okay, to BIOS. So I'm just proceeding with the installation. And you know, as typical, the system is also freezing a bit. Okay, so that's why I may not be too forthcoming as to say I have fully installed.
Install that. Yeah, I understand. I know of Ayangbemi music here, but it's muted and I can't hear him. Just to ensure if he has does anybody has his or this thing configured? I know Azizat had a problem with internet issue. I mean, VM not seeing network initially. Azizat, have you been able to resolve that?
Good afternoon. Yes, I have. But I'm currently not with my laptop. That's why I'm not responding.
Oh, okay. And my laptop is just frozen. Nothing is happening. In fact, the time on my laptop is still showing 4 o'clock. It's still showing 4 p.m. So it seems maybe the VM is a bit, I mean, ever since I installed that VM on my PC, it's really been annoying and that's not so good anyway. Let's see if let me try and chat him up via WhatsApp because I know he has his own ready. He showed me some vulnerability was able to scan during last week and during the course of last week. Yeah. Let me try and chat him up. I'm trying to get his attention via WhatsApp. If that would work. And if not, I will just kind of look for another way to take this class, and yeah. It's not picking. Let's get started. Welcome everyone to today's class, and I'm sorry about last week. We couldn't have a session last week because I had to attend to some family events, and I was thinking, oh, I would get home very early. Unfortunately, I got home quite late, around 6 p.m. So I knew that might be too late for us to start the class. So the plan is that I'm taking I'll be taking last week's class today, and tomorrow being a public holiday for everyone. I don't know if that is totally true, but I believe it's public holiday for everyone tomorrow, all over the world, Nigeria, wherever you are. I believe so because it's workers' day. I'm thinking tomorrow, same time tomorrow, 4 p.m. we'll be having today's class. Today's class tomorrow, that will be week 5. If that works for us, can we or say signify by saying yes or just type yes, and then I can, it's still the same link, but I think we should have today's class tomorrow, and since we'll be having last week's class today, is that fine by us, everyone?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. So I'm thinking 4 p.m. tomorrow might work. Is that a good time, or do you want us to move it, or is that also a good time, 4 p.m. tomorrow?
For me, it's a good time.
Okay. So today we'll be rounding up with our vulnerability assessments class, right? And then we'll move a bit into risk management. So the reason why I said risk management is whenever we do vulnerability in an organization, whenever you assess a vulnerability or you run your scan, and even before you remediate, there is something we call risk analysis. Risk analysis in the sense that, say for instance, you're working with a big organization and you have about thousands of assets, don't let me say millions of assets, like a big firm, like one of the global investment firm, like Goldman Sachs, and or all this, even Fidelity Bank, let me use Fidelity Bank that has over 10,000 assets, for instance, and you did your vulnerability assessment and you have about thousands of vulnerabilities to attend to, right? Knowing fully well that you are not the one remediating it. However, you need asset owner or stakeholders that are involved in that asset, that owns the asset or application, the business owner, to remediate, to fix the vulnerabilities. And you know that that's not their major thing. Say, for instance, there is a vulnerability in an application, in a web application developed by your web app team or your software engineers. They are busy with writing code, but you needed them to kind of fix some things in the code. And you have, let's say, 100 vulnerabilities assigned to them. You can't expect them to fix all the 100 vulnerabilities, for instance. And you have to do something we call like a risk analysis. Okay, out of these 100 vulnerabilities, if the severity rating is critical, we have like 5 critical or 5 highs. And out of the critical vulnerabilities, they know that if they should apply the fixes or if they should apply an update, it might affect production or it might affect the business. It might disrupt operations. And that is where risk assessment or IT risk assessments, because risk assessment can be in different angle, IT risk assessment in terms of credit, in terms of finances and everything. But because we are cybersecurity persons, I'm talking about IT risk assessments. You have to do some assessment to see if we did not fix the vulnerability, what would happen, right? Are we going to kind of find a compensatory control around this? Or do we need to mitigate it? Do we need to remediate? A lot of things we have to come in place. And so I will just give us like a brief summary on how risk management work. We're not going to delve into it like that, but I would say after the class, you might want to read more on risk management. And for people that would like to, focus on GRC, governance, risk and compliance, this might be like a good starting point for you. And the truth is, this cybersecurity mentorship class, we can't cover everything cybersecurity, right? And so I'm a bit tense towards a normal security analyst job role. Like, what do security analysts, what do they do? And I'm trying to pick some aspect of a security analyst role and kind of fix into this 8 weeks class. However, it's not covering all cybersecurity domain. It's not covering the pen testing aspect. It's not covering GRC per se. It's not covering architects. It's not covering security engineering work like configuration, because we don't even have things to configure. I think a bit of configuration was us setting up our test environment, right? Which is not bad, but that's not what they do. It's not covering automation process, writing PowerShell scripting, for instance, or automating security operation process. It's more deeper, and all these things in a way might even require you to be working to be able to get hands-on on it. But I'm trying to also look at something that we can teach, and with or without hands-on, you still get some things out of this class. So we are not delving into risk itself, but I just want to give us like an overview of what risk management is and how it works. Hopefully my system would come up before the end of the class, because I have like a template, an IT risk assessment template that I would really love to show us and see how it works, just to have like, a bigger overview of risk management. So today we'll be talking about, we'll be analyzing our vulnerability scan results. We will try and remediate some. And after remediating, we would verify, we're scanning the asset to see if those things we remediate has been fixed. And my plan was to use my PC because I have my environments ready and everything and the likes, but it's not just working. It's not working. And Ayangbemi, I don't know if you can hear us now. Ayangbemi Ezekiel, if you can hear us, please.
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you. I'm online now.
Oh, good. Are you with your PC?
No. I'm out for the moment.
Oh, so you're unable to share your screen with us?
No. I can't for now. But I'm heading probably once I get home.
Okay. Maybe if you're able to get home before the end of the class, that would be helpful. My own computer is frozen and I can't seem to share my screen using my PC. So that's
okay, no problem. In the next 30 minutes, I should get home.
Okay. Let's open that would work. Thank you.
Okay.
So the plan is to work on, the vulnerability assessment scan that we were able to do last week, 2 weeks ago, and we want to analyze the results, then remediate, and also verify after remediating the vulnerabilities. And where risk assessment comes in is during remediation. What if your asset owner is saying they cannot remediate or fix this vulnerability? What would happen? And that is where risk assessment will come into place. Will come in play, and then we can decide what we need to do on that particular vulnerabilities, right? So vulnerability assessment, what this class is, if, say for instance, you've not been able to configure your environment, I was hoping I can kind of show you screenshots of things or problem you might encounter during installation of all this, during setting up your environment. So this is my VM, for instance, my VM, my Windows VM. And after installing Windows VM, I tried to get my IP address. I remember the last time the IP address when we were trying to use Azizat PC was something around 169 something. I can't remember that. It is not the IPv4 address, and that is why we could not reach the IPv4 address from our Nessus scanner, right? So after configuring my own Windows VM, I did ipconfig, and I was able to get the IPv4 address information. So the idea is, I don't want us to run vulnerability scan on our host PC itself, right? Because I believe we should be able to do a bit of trick, like I want to kind of trick my Windows VM to be able to read more vulnerabilities, right? And that is why I said we shouldn't use our PC, either MacBook or Windows or anything, for vulnerability scan. And also, I don't want us to kind of expose the kind of, any vulnerabilities that we might have on our PC. So it's better we have a separate environment for this. And so after installing my Windows VM, I did ipconfig, and I was able to get this particular IP address. So this is my IP address, 192.168.1.210. And the idea is, once you install your Windows VM and you're able to get your IP address, ensure that your Windows VM has internet. If you can see my Windows VM here, when I was trying to do this last week, this is the internet, right? It's connected to the internet, right? And so since please let me know, I can't show us anything right now, but let me know if you are following, and if you need me to kind of repeat myself, please feel free to stop me along the class. So what I did was to remember that we have our Nessus, our Nessus application. It's a web application running on your computer itself, right? And so we are trying to scan Windows VM. It means we needed our Windows computer to be able to reach your Windows VM IP address, right? And so when you try to ping 192.168.1.210, definitely it will say it cannot reach the host, right? And so what I did was to come back to my Windows VM and run wf.msc to be able to get to my Windows Defender Firewall page, right? And I click on this Windows Defender Firewall property and turn off everything here, my domain profile, my private profile. When you click on domain profile, you're going to see all this information. You will change it to off. There is on, there is off, and there is one other option, but just change it to off, right? And also you click on your private profile, you turn it off, the firewall state should be off, and public profile as well to be off. And once you do that, right, you'll be able to, so this is me trying to ping my Windows VM machine, 192.168.1.210 initially. When I was trying to ping it, it's saying request timeout. But after making these changes from my firewall, like changing everything to an off state, I was able to reach my Windows VM from my personal computer. That means if I was trying to scan this particular IP address, it will definitely run, right? So that was the issue we faced 2 weeks ago when we were trying to use Azizat PC. Azizat PC could not see the network, and we were unable to reach Azizat Windows VM from our host computer. But so this was what we all did, and that worked. Any question before I move on to the next one? So what I'm going to share is, if you've not been able to configure your PC, I will definitely share this slide with us, and you can follow the guide here to, run your own vulnerability assessment as well. So another thing that happened is, when I scanned my, oh God, I just wish my computer is back, then I can. Just pretty annoying. So when I scanned this IP address, 192.168.1.210 from my Nessus environment, I only found one vulnerability, and the vulnerability is around SMB. No, not SMB. I can't remember the vulnerability. Let me see. So I only found one vulnerability, I think one medium, right? It's something around SMB's port opened or something. I can't actually remember the vulnerabilities. It was just only one medium, and others were info. I think Ezekiel also showed me his own assessment scan, and he couldn't even find any vulnerability at all. It was just info, like information. There's no severity, right? So if you after the first initial scan, and the scan I did too was a non-credential scan. I think I showed us last week about credential scan and non-credential scan. Non-credential scan is when you run the scan without having to put your credentials, like you did not put the Windows VM credentials. You just run the scan, but it wouldn't do like a deep scan analysis, right? It wasn't that deep, right? So, however, what I did was now to kind of tweak my Windows, my Windows VM machine. Oh God, I'm just sorry, I'm a bit distracted. I'm just trying to look out for my PC, but it's not still loading. Pretty annoying. Right? So is to configure my virtual machine to accept authenticated scan, because the first one I did was a non-authenticated scan. I didn't use password at all. I didn't use any credential for that, right? And so I saved the results, and then on your virtual machine, all you just need to do is to come to your services, right? 1 minute, please. It's not still responding. Hello. Anyway, it's not responding, and it's pretty annoying. But are you following me? Do you understand all the explanation up to this process? So, because the plan is, I will share the slide with us, and I expect us to, follow the process, and not before next class, tomorrow is next class, before next week, Monday, like during the week anyway, I would love to see our scan results. First assignment is the first scan results without authentication. Like you run your Nessus environment, you do not put credential, right? If you don't know how to do that, I think I showed us in the last class. You might want to go back to the last class, and yeah, there was a bit of delay. You might want to fast forward to the last part of the class we had 2 Sundays ago, and check how to run credentialized scan and non-credentialized scan. So the first assignment is you will do a non-credentialized scan, like run scan, a basic scan on your virtual machine, right? Without having to put your credential, and save the results. Or you can name it Windows non-credential. Let us see the result of the virtual machine, right? After turning off your firewall state and everything. And then the second one is you will configure your virtual machine to accept authenticated scan. I would love to show us how this works, but if I should launch my VM right now, I'm sure everything will just messes itself up, right? So how do I get here? On your virtual machine, just run services.msc, right? You just type services.msc. It will bring you to this particular page, right? And so under your services.msc, look for remote registry. And your remote registry, try to enable it. It wasn't running before. Ensure that it is running, that your remote registry is running, right? And also you can, and the reason why I'm trying to enable remote registry is just to, in a way, it can actually see. So if it's an authenticated scan and you enable your remote registry, on your results, you will definitely see something around some old cipher suits, depicted cipher suit like SSL version 3, cipher suits like RC4. If you have RC4 enabled on your virtual machine, you will definitely see those kind of vulnerabilities. And after this, if you enable your remote registry, the next thing to do is to just type network, and you can just type file. And I don't even know, I can't remember what I type, but if you just type network and sharing center, you can search for it, right? It would, or just type file and printer sharing. Sorry, if you can take notes, type file and printer sharing, and then it will bring you to this, particular. Is anybody trying to say something? Okay, I assume it's no. So to bring you to this, it's definitely open this Windows page, right? And try to turn on your network discovering and also turn on your file and printer sharing. That's step 2. Step 1 is enable remote registry. Step 2 is turn on your network discovering and your file and printer sharing. Do this on your Windows VM. Don't alter your own host machine itself, please, because except you are sure that if you don't want to install Windows VM at all, you want to scan your machine, after doing all these things, you have to revert back. You can actually kind of define like a restore point on your PC, right? And after all this, you can restore back your OS to a particular point in time. You might want to do that, but I would advise us to try and configure this Windows machine. It will even kind of make you learn. Like when I was trying to install my virtual machine 2 weeks ago, I never knew that I needed to go to my BIOS to turn on my hypervisor. And I think Victor also mentioned that now that he encountered the problem and he needed to change his BIOS settings. Those kind of challenges are, it's always interesting to know that, okay, I faced a challenge and I'm able to resolve it. And there was someone that also reached out to me last week. The person was trying to install his Nessus this thing, and he encountered a problem, and we never knew if it was storage problem or network problem. And I was thinking, okay, it could be your storage. He said he has enough storage. And during troubleshooting, I was saying maybe network. He said network, that it seems his network is okay. And later discovered himself that it was his antivirus that prevented his Nessus from running. I mean, he wasn't able to configure he wasn't able to bring up his Nessus environment because of antivirus. And he discovered that himself, and I was like, we keep learning every day, So I would advise us to try and configure this ourselves. And in the process, you might even encounter some problem. When you do Google search or anything, this will definitely work. So first step, enable your remote registry. The second step is to turn on your network discovery and file and printer sharing. And another one is to, when you go to your user account control setting, just type user account control setting, right? And before now, it's always on notify, because this is a security settings. If you try to change it to never notify, if you are trying to make like, okay, e.g., you are trying to install an application on your PC, remember there's some that always prompt up and say, do you want to continue? You press yes or no, right? But if you change it to never notify, you might not even know. And that means if somebody is trying to do a legitimate activity, or maybe you will download like you downloaded a malicious application, for instance, and it's not even going to run on the background, and it's like a GUI application. If you change your Windows settings to never notify, you wouldn't know that something is happening, right? So, but we are trying to make our Windows VM not too secure, such that we can get more vulnerabilities. And we are also trying to accept an authenticated scan from our Nexus on our Windows VM. So when you go to user account control, which is the third step, you move this blue button. It was there before. You move it down to never notify. You can see it is not recommended, but we are allowed to do that. It's something we are just trying to do. I saw this. I can share the distance. Okay, it's even on my distance. I mean, where I saw this settings, it's been defined by Nexus itself, how we can configure our environment to be an authenticated scan. You might want to read the document, but I've summarized everything here for us. Well, I wish the link is on this slide. You can read more on that. And the third step is to do this. After the third step, there is also you have to kind of edit your remote registry and registry editor. You know, registry is like a database that contains everything that happens on your computer, on your PC, everything. We are not going to talk about registry, but I can actually even, okay, sorry, this is not Windows. I'm using MacBook. I would have loved to just kind of give us a brief explanation on Windows registry. It's really, really, really important for security analysts to understand how registry work, a bit of registry, what we normally check out for, or what do hackers, what are they interested in whenever they get access to your Windows VM. Something around SAM accounts. There is what we call security account manager that contains all your username and password that have access to that particular Windows VM. So they are always going after, how do I get the SAM file from registry? I can show us that if my PC comes up before the end of the class, I will show us that. But registry is something that is really important when in cybersecurity. You need to be able to understand what some of these features, what do they do, right? But for this class anyway, when you go to a registry, right, you come to key local machine. There are five, how do I put it? We have 5 folders, and one of the folder is key local machine. To come to it, just type regedit. If you type regedit, right, regedit on your Windows run, you can click Windows R for Windows run, then regedit. When you type it, it brings to registry editor. And then you come to key local machine. When you click on key local machine, it will bring down different files. You go to software, and from software, you look for Microsoft. And from Microsoft, sorry, this is not practical. It's not, I needed to show us, right? I needed to show us. 1 minute. Let me see if I can just launch, even if it's my registry alone, that I'm able to launch on this PC. Because running too many things is giving it some headache. Okay, let me see if I can run registry on my computer. 1 minute, please. Okay, while I teach you that, let me continue. I don't want to waste time. Let me just be done with this slide, and I move to my PC and I try to run 1 or 2 things. So I will just explain registry for us after the end of the class. So like I'm saying, so you will go to your Windows current version policies and system. And there is something important that we need to do. What I did was to add create a DWORD file called local accounts filter policy. It was not there before. I created that on my registry. So when you get your policies and your system, so when you click on system, this is the system, right? And I navigated to my system, and I come here, I right click, and I like create a new file. So this is the policy that I create. This local account filter policy is not in your Windows VM initially. I created this local account filter policy and I set the value to 1, like a DWORD file, the reg DWORD. I set the value to 1, right? We have to also do that. I might just show us how we needed to do it. So this is the 4th step, I think. Yeah, the 4th and the last steps to configure your virtual machine. Now, once you're able to do these 4 steps successfully, you go back to your Nessus scan, right? You go back to your Nessus environment and you type, you put in your credential, you run like a credentialized scan. Does anybody has Nessus running at the moment, like an active Nessus application running? And if you're on your PC, I just quickly want to show us the credentialized scan and the non-credentialized scan. Does anybody has that? I think it's in. I'm sorry, this is not practical enough. I would love to do that. Show us. This is so fucked up. My PC just fucked everything up. Sorry. I'm so sorry. And I don't have like a screenshot of that here. But if you don't have to do it, just reach out to me. Send me a direct message. I can show you how to run a credentialized scan during the course of the week, because I want to see our assignments. I want to see the scan. I want to see the result of your scan without credential and the result of your scan after configuring all this, right? And you put your credential. So the credential is the username and password of your virtual machine. So access to your virtual machine, you definitely have like a username and password. You put it while you are trying to run the second scan for credentialized assessment scan. And once you do that, you run your Nessus environment, and that's result 2. So I'm expecting 2 results thus far. The first one without any modification except turning off your firewall. I want to see the scan results. The scan result of after configuring your Windows virtual machine to a self-authenticated scan, right? And you run your results. I want to see the results. And then the third one is I want us to, after getting the first and second result, the third assignment is to download old software. Here I just say download old firewall version from this link, and Internet Explorer from this link. Download it on your virtual machine. Don't download it on your own PC. Please remember, because I assume that your virtual machine has internet, right? On your Windows VM. So once you download these 2, run it and install it, right? And then thereafter, go to your Nessus application and scan your PC again. That means we'll be having like 3 results, right? However, once you launch your scan and you've been able to get these 3 results, I would love us to compare 2 results. Result of the second scan, the authenticated scan, and result of the one with vulnerabilities. And once you compare these 2 scans, you can be sure that you would have a more severity vulnerabilities on the one with deprecated software and the first and the second scan. So you compare the results. Say for instance, you have like 10 vulnerabilities in the first one. You might have 15 or 18, depending on how many software you're able to. You can actually also install old VSC player, old Java application, just think of anything, any application, and run the old version, and then scan your PC. You will definitely see these two results. And let me take us back to why do we run vulnerability assessments in a corporate environment? The truth of the matter is we can't say because we are secure today, we might not be secure tomorrow. Security today does not equate to security tomorrow. And it's all around, because you brush your teeth today. I mean, I brushed my teeth 5 times today. And you're thinking you can leave your mouth like that without washing it for another 2 months. It's not possible, right? Or for the rest of the year, that kind of a thing. It's not possible. That means you would have piloted a lot of bacteria, viruses in your mouth, right? And so that is why in an organization, we have like a scheduled scan, regular scan updates on all our application endpoints, servers. Endpoint means servers, your workstations, whatsoever things. And at times you can even say, okay, every Sunday, I'm running vulnerability scan on this. Every Monday morning by 2 a.m., you should launch a scan on a particular server, depending on how big it is and depending on how many assets you have and how you categorize the assets. And something in risk assessment is, okay, I will mention that later. Don't let me talk about that now, right? And so once you launch your scan and you compare the two vulnerability results, I would love us to remediate. Remediate means fixing, trying to fix it, trying to solve the problem. And remediation will be, say for instance, you either update the Firefox to the latest version that has no vulnerability. You also update Internet Explorer to the latest version, or you uninstall it, right? And then you run the vulnerability, you run your scan again, then you compare the results. So that means right now I'm expecting about 5 screenshots from us. Let me reassure the screenshots. Screenshot of the first assessment scan without credential. Screenshot of the second assessment scan with credential. And screenshots of the third assessment scan with credential and obsolete softwares, right? And then screenshots of, which is the fourth one, the fourth screenshots will be of your scan results after remediating or after fixing some of the problems. 4 screenshots. And I would know if you did, because you might say, okay, I would not bother to install software. I would just say this is the result. I would know because I'm expecting that screenshots, and I want to see the time you run those kind of screenshots, how many vulnerabilities and everything. I want to see it. You might not even show me the result, just show me the 4 processes that you did. That means I'm expecting like a 4 vulnerability assessment scan on your Nessus. If peradventure your Nessus has expired, try to use another person's email address, maybe your uncle, your auntie, or anybody, or you can even regenerate a new activation code and reinstall your Nessus and do all these scans once and for all and show me the results. Deal. So I'm expecting the results on or before Friday from all of us in the group. You can just share it to me on WhatsApp, just DM me and share the results. And yeah, I wouldn't say the implication of, I don't have any implication anyway, just for our own benefits. I want us to kind of have hands-on and ensure that we understand it. So this is the process with assessment scan, remediation, and validation. I wish I'm able to show us all this today. Unfortunately, my PC fucked up again. I couldn't do that. And I was hoping someone has been able to set up his or her own, then we can use that as practical. However, if that is still possible before the end of the class, fine. But if not, I would love us to do it personally and then share your results with me. If you encounter any problem, let me know. I will definitely respond when I get your message. If not immediately, I would respond before the end of the week. Any question? Because that brings us to the end of vulnerability assessment scan, remediation, and validating the results. Do we have any question before we move to risk assessment? Question. So let me just kind of throw question and ensure that we have, okay, who is user? User. There's somebody called user on this page. User. Can you hear me? Okay, user is not, let me ask him to unmute. Okay, Azumi, okay. I just want to throw a random question, right? Who do I call next? Okay, let's start with Victor. Hi, Victor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Yeah. What do I mean by remediation? In your own time, what do you think I meant by remediation?
Is to fix the weakness that has been established.
Okay, okay.
So probably there is a loophole that our scan has brought up. Okay, so we are remediating that position by ensuring that whatever that is responsible for the weakness is taken off.
Okay. So thank you for that. Let me go to Olayiwola. Olayiwola, my question would be, what's the relationship between vulnerability, threat, and risk? What do you understand by that? Vulnerability, threat, and risk. Olayiwola. Olayiwola, can you hear us? Who do I move the question to? Orire Abe, can you unmute your mic, please? I wouldn't ask you that question. I'm asking another question.
Yes, I'm listening. I can hear you.
Okay, I'm going to ask you that same question. Can you help Olayiwola? What do you know by vulnerability, threat, and risk? What is the relationship between vulnerability, threat, and risk?
Well, hello?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay. Well, vulnerability itself is known as, for me, it's just the risk that can affect a system, and the threat level, that is the threat itself, let me put it as in level at which it can affect it, if I'm correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, almost getting there. That is not the real explanation. Yeah, you have an idea. You're almost getting there. Azizat would help us out. Azizat, can you help us out? Threat, vulnerability, and risk. How would you explain this to? I mean, say for instance, you are interviewing for a vulnerability assessment, vulnerability analyst role, and they ask you this kind of question. What would you say? How would you be able to talk about it? Azizat. Is Azizat on this call? Yes, Azizat. Okay.
Good afternoon.
That's
So, vulnerability are possible, I will say they are all the risks that are on a particular system. So vulnerability shows all the possible risks that are on a system. So the risk could be either high or low. So risks are, when we say threats are exploited risk. Those are risks that are probably has been exploited. But risk are I don't know how to say it. Risk are possible threats, risk are possible threats. Let me put it that way. I don't know if it's aligning well. So vulnerability are all the risks that are on the system, and threats are the risks that have been exploited. Then when there is a threat, that means the risk has been exploited. But risk are all they are possible threats.
Yeah, you are almost there, but you're almost there as well. Should I just explain all? Somebody wants to rescue us finally, and I won't bother to explain, or should I explain? Okay, let me leave that question open and ask another question. Okay, I'm going to say, okay, Victor wants to explain, right? Okay, Victor, you are raising your hand.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So our vulnerability is the known and unknown weaknesses on our systems, any of our assets, be it applications, be it system, be it softwares, whatever it is, even physical assets that one can, let's say equipment that we use, okay, for the things that we do. Okay, while threats is anything that can exploit the weakness in our assets. Okay, so risk is a threat exploiting the weakness in our assets. So meaning that risk means something is crystallizing as a result of the weakness involved. And a threat agent has taken charge and has exploited it. So meaning that it crystallizes. So that's risk.
Okay, thank you everyone. We all have an idea. Okay, I wouldn't throw the question out again. I will just explain, right? And after this explanation, I would expect us also to do more research, probably watch YouTube video on this, because if you are to interview for a vulnerability analyst role, you have to be able to explain these three terms comfortably and in such a way that you don't kind of mix some terminology together, right? And it's simple. If somebody asks me, what do I know, or what is the relationship between vulnerability, threat, and risk? I would say risk equals vulnerability multiplied by threats. If you do not understand anything, even if you cannot explain what a risk is, what a vulnerability is, what a threat is, just tell them that to determine a risk score of a particular asset, you have to know the vulnerability score and the threat score. So if a vulnerability score is 5 and the threat score is 2, then you can be sure that the risk is what? Is 10. So you say risk is what? Vulnerability times threat. And thereafter, you can now explain what a vulnerability is and what a threat is, because that way you've told them what do you mean by risk? It is a threat exploiting a vulnerability, right? And then you can get to your risk. A vulnerability is a weakness in an asset, a weakness in an application, like a weakness, or you can call it an open door, a door that ought to be closed and you have it open, like an open padlock that is not locked, which is like a weakness. Say for instance, in your house, you've secured everything and you are going out in the morning, you forgot to lock your door with key, you just close the door. It's a weakness, right? And a threat is when a threat actor is trying to exploit that vulnerability. E.g., like I said, I closed my door, I did not use key, right? And then the threat there, however, is a malicious person. I just said, let me try if you even close your door or not. And I just turn up the doorknob and it's opened, right? It's a threat. I've been able to exploit that weakness. Or say, for instance, you even you were able to kind of lock your door. Remember this, some padlock then in Nigeria, we have different padlock that one key can open like like 5 padlocks, that kind of a thing. So it's like an hacker has just one key, and he or she is trying to see if is able to open any of this padlock. So a threat is something that is trying to exploit a vulnerability, and a risk is your vulnerability and your threat together. In some cases, you might see vulnerability as, they can call it a vulnerability. You can also see it as frequency. You can see the word frequency. You can see the word likelihood. What is the likelihood that this threat will exploit this thing? You can call it a likelihood times a likelihood. And then your risk might be likelihood times impact, right? Impact could be a threat as well. But I don't want to convince us. Just know that risk is threat times vulnerability. That's all. I'm going to throw this question to, my battery is low. 1 minute, please. Let me quickly plug this in. Low battery. Sorry, guys. 1 minute. Who else have not answered question? Lagoke Oluwaseyi, can you hear us? Lagoke, can you please unmute your mic? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, Lagoke is not with us. Dolapo, can you please unmute your mic? Hi, Dolapo, we want to hear your voice. Okay. Diola Dollars, can you please unmute your mic if you can hear us?
Hello.
Hi, thank you. We want to hear your beautiful voice. And the question would be, if you find a defect or a bug in an application, do you try to fix it?
If you find a bug in an application, do you try to fix it?
Yeah.
I
mean, what would be your reaction to that? So, for instance, you have vulnerability analyst and you've run your scan in an organization and you found some defects or you found a bug in an application. Will you try to fix it? What would be your approach?
Well, I think I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm just going to try to do like take a guess. So if I find a bug in an application, is it best to like restart or like unplug from, I don't know.
So, okay, let's start. What's a defect and what is a bug?
Okay. I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay. Who is going to help Diola Dollar? Ezekiel, can you hear us? If you can hear us, you can mute your mic. Oh, people are not talking now. It is assignment time or a mini interview of vulnerability analyst low time, and nobody's ready to rescue us. This is not good. Okay, Ezekiel is there. Ezekiel, thank you. Diola, you've not answered your question, so we are still coming back to you. I said, if you find a defect or a bug in an application, do you try to fix it? And that question brings us to, what do you know? What do you think a defect or a bug is?
Well, I would say a defect should be maybe a mistake in a code. A bug, I mean.
Okay.
A bug should be a mistake in a code. Why a defect should be probably a mistake in the output.
So
I don't know, just my...
you have an idea. So in this case, I mean, we've been talking about something since morning. What have we been talking about since 2 weeks ago?
Vulnerability assessment.
Vulnerability. So when I said a defect, a bug is a weakness, the vulnerability, right? So they might just use the time when you find a bug, there's a bug. A bug means maybe a code is not running, or a running code stops running, or a bug is something that is not good, is a weakness. A defect is a weakness. We can call it vulnerability generally. So thank you.
Okay.
Now, back to Diola. When you find a vulnerability, so I wouldn't use the word defect or bug. When you find a vulnerability in an application, and you are a vulnerability analyst, do you try to fix it, Adiola?
I think you try to fix it because it's a mistake. So you try to find out where the mistake is coming from. So like a test.
So when I'm talking to everybody right now, when you remember, okay, Victor is raising his hand. Let's hear Victor's out. Okay. And Oriri is also raising his hand. So Victor, come first. Do you have okay?
Yeah, thank you. So in the first place, what we need to do is to consult with the users of the application or the asset manager in charge. Okay, so we'll have to notify them of that weakness. So it's them that have responsibility to fix it. So we will have to give them a timeline to fix it. So how they will carry out the fixing and getting it fixed is their responsibility. Just the stakeholders that are the managers of the assets. Those are the ones that have the responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you. Yeah, I think that is a perfect answer. So when you find a bug in an application, like I said, the work of a vulnerability analyst might not be to remediate, right? I'm just only showing us that we need to remediate and validate or whatever. Your work really as a vulnerability analyst in an organization is to carry out this assessment scan, and then you report the assessment scan based on your risk rating and severity rating to the asset owner, to stakeholders, application owner. Tell them about the weakness or bug, and tell them so depending on your SLA, service level agreements with your client or something, or your policy, your procedures, you might say, if you found a critical vulnerability, it has to be fixed within the first 7 days, within the first 14 days, depending on whatever they use in an organization. You inform them about these vulnerabilities, right? And they fix it. And then they come back to you. We've been able to fix this vulnerability. And then your work was to validate. You will rerun your scan, you will launch your scan again and ensure that this has been fixed. In a situation whereby you are expected to remediate and also fix, but nobody would even expect you. You are not a programmer. Say, for instance, you don't write code. Nobody would expect you to fix a bug in an application. And then let's even say, when I was working with Fidelity Bank, I was in threat and vulnerability management department, and we fixed some vulnerabilities. But when it comes to vulnerabilities around application, around network devices, you talk to stakeholders. Even in a situation whereby I need to fix a vulnerabilities on endpoints or on server, I don't just fix it, because fixing vulnerabilities might disrupt or might kind of have effects. It might change the entire business operation. You need to follow due process, change management. You want to make a change, you don't just make a change. You talk to your guy or your manager or stakeholders to approve the change. And then I would also use styles to mention this. Although I didn't tell us this, thank you everyone, we all did great. But I would also kind of introduce this to us. Even while fixing a vulnerability, even if you talk to your stakeholders or application owners, there is something that they must do before they fix it. And that is some part of GRC process. GRC people ensures that you don't just make changes to production environment without having a proper test in place. So they wouldn't just fix this thing on production server. They will have to do this on their test environments, right? And after fixing on their test environments, they monitor it for a while and ensure that it does not affect, it's not breaking anything. And after that, they must have what we call rollback plan. Rollback plans is if this thing is working on my test machine, on our test environment, and is working properly, if we make these changes on production server, production application, what if we say it's working on test and then it's affecting production? You have to have a plan in place to quickly roll back whatever fix you've done to the initial state. Because one thing is important, security is okay, but don't forget our CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We don't want, because we want a particular application to be secure, and then we affect business operation in terms of availability. We don't want that. We try to balance the three key things, CIA, right? And so GRC people will ensure that this, if you apply this application, if you fix this particular bug, do you have a rollback plan in place? What would you do? How many minutes will you be able to kind of roll this thing back to the initial state, such that it does not affect the operation? So if you get this question and interview, if you have a bug, or will you fix it? Yes, it will definitely be fixed. However, you are not rushing to fixing it, right? You ensure that you follow due process, talk to stakeholders. And like I said, before you even run scan, they have to know that this scan, you run this scan. Even before you run the scan, you've agreed with them that at a particular period of time, their business process is not that active, say midnight on Saturday or Sunday. Then you can run your scan, you can schedule your scan to that particular process. You don't just launch a scan on Monday morning, because you don't know how disruptive the scan might be, right? So you have to follow all this due process. It's not just you running the scan and say fix. That's not your work alone. You have to communicate with them, and have a meeting with them. I think my last question would be, before we move to, should I call last question? I don't know. Let me shackle another question. And this will go to Diola. Has given us answers. Azizat, we've not heard from Dolapo. Ezekiel has given us answers. Victor, yes. Orire wanted to talk the other time. So Orire, can you mute your mic, please? Orire, can you mute your mic? Thank you, Orire. How are you doing? So my question,
Okay, I'm good.
how do you determine the severity of a discovered vulnerability? How do you determine the severity of a discovered vulnerability?
Well, good evening. It's evening already. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. According to what you taught us before, there are levels of.
Wait. What if I thought something wrong?
No. I've checked it and I discovered it's correct.
Okay.
There are different levels of vulnerability. So according to the level at which it is, if it is high, if it is medium, or it is low, you understand? So the level of the vulnerability is what determines how fast you treat the threats.
You've changed my question. Well, thank you.
Well,
You're correct. But my question is, how did you determine the severity? What are the things? What is that thing that you use to determine the severity of a vulnerability? How critical the vulnerability is? Is this vulnerability critical? Is it high? Is it medium? Is it low? What is that keyword that we use?
The CVSS score.
CVSS score. Who said that, Diola? Thank you. CVSS score. CVSS score. I hope that is ringing a bell now. What's the CVSS, Common Vulnerability Scoring System? That would make us determine how severe a vulnerability is. Thank you, Riri. Thank you, Adiola. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Olayiwola, we've not heard your voice. We have to hear your voice. Olayiwola, are you on this call? Yes or no? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I wouldn't mention name. Last question. Let me look for the last question. This last question, I want it to be subjective in a way. Okay, last question. I'm coming now. 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute. Oh, I'm talking about CIA trade. Hold on. How important, right, is it to stay updated with changes in the vulnerability landscape? How important is it to stay updated with changes in the vulnerability landscape? How important it is? Anybody? I just need 3 answers. And then we move to risk assessment and we'll call it. Then I'm going to show us something before we call it a day, an evening. Anybody? Azizat, your name is always coming first. So Azizat, you're helping us. How important is it to stay updated with changes in the vulnerability landscape? Azizat, thank you.
Okay. So I do not understand when you say vulnerability landscape.
So when I say threat landscape, what do I mean by threat landscape? When I say vulnerability world, okay, vulnerability world, like.
Well, according to what, okay, let me not use that same line.
Oh yeah, thank you.
So you said there was this the CVE, for example. So usually updates happen when maybe there has been a discovery in there's a vulnerability and there's been a security patch and maybe that vulnerability has been fixed. So for example, like Windows, for example, let me use Microsoft. If they discover a threat on their end and they fix it, they are going to fix the security patch and then throw in an update to all Microsoft users. So I think they all need, if you do not update whatever you are using, that means you are still prone to that vulnerability that has been fixed, which means your system is even more likely to be exploited.
Yeah, thank you. So that means it is essential, it is important, right? Because you wouldn't say because I use Microsoft, then Microsoft they are responsible for fixing those things. No, Microsoft, they've done their work by saying, hello, we've released this patch, and then you guys should do what? Fix it. And so where do you, I think the next person is Diola Dollars. Diola Dollars, you are going to spend dollars for us this evening. Where do you see list of vulnerabilities? Which sites can you definitely like check list of vulnerabilities? Where? Diola Dollars, can you help us?
Exploits DB.
What do you say?
Yeah, we can use exploit DB.
Exploit DB. Okay.
Yes.
Another one. Thank you, Ezekiel. I'm expecting something. Somebody should say something. Thank you, Ezekiel. Who wants to go again?
Yes, we can check net.org.
The
Check OAP.
First, but there is this database, right? That you can see. What do you say?
CWE.org.
Sorry, can we mute our mic if you are not talking? But I can hear us.
Yeah, so you can check CWE, Common Weakness Enumeration website. You can check met.org. Many of them like that.
Okay.
And
There is-
OWASP as well. OWASP.
OWASP, yes, that's correct. How about NVD? Have we heard of NVD, National Vulnerability Database?
You mentioned it.
Yes, NVD. I think I showed us NVD in the last 2-3 classes, where you can actually search for a particular vendor, right? And then you can see the list of vulnerabilities. So what company does is they connect their vulnerability, whatever, to an NVD, and then they sort of inject vulnerabilities based on the application they use or the vendor they use directly into their, vulnerability information directly into their own internal database, and then they can quickly kind of get notification on this, and from there they have access to any vulnerabilities that they are prone to. Yes, I think that is my question. Yeah, that is my question. Thank you everyone for beautiful comments and answered. We are good to go. Don't worry, just create your CV and let's keep applying. Victor, you have a question?
Yes, please. I have a question. Thank you. So my question is around because we have other vulnerability scanning tools, okay?
Yeah.
Apart from Nexus. Okay, so say for example, I'm an information security manager in a place, and I'm asked, I'm given 2-3 tools like that
Okay.
I should pick one for the organization. Is there any way I can narrow down to one which will be the best out of like 3?
Good question. Thank you for that question. And I would explain based on my own experience, sort of. Yeah, you're a vulnerability analyst, and say for instance, you've been using Nexus in your organization, and maybe you think Nexus is not sort of the best. It's reporting a lot of false positive. You've done a lot of tuning, and you still get false positive, all those kind of things, and you feel like, oh, let's try another vendor or another security assessment solution. And you did your research online, you saw about 50-60 list of vulnerability assessment vendors, and you're able to pick 3, and then you want to determine which one would I use. There is something we call skip my brain now. Proof of value, POV, POC. Proof of value, proof of concepts. So depending on how you work in your organization, but I will just give you like a general overview that I think everybody sort of follows. You invited these 3 vendors and say, I Collis, I Rapid7, I Nessus, let's just use those 3 and say, we want to use you, or we want to kind of acquire your solution for our vulnerability assessment tool in an organization. Before you do that, there is something you have to create. There is always something around request for proposal, Rfp Documents. And you're a vulnerability analyst, for instance, and you said you think a solution A is not suitable for you. That means you must have found something like a drawback in solution A that you would kind of like to see an improvement on another solution. Or maybe you've not even had any solution before. You just want to choose one. You might even kind of check internet and see what are the qualities of a good vulnerability assessment tools, right? Ability to integrate with cloud. Say for instance, you use cloud, or what do you use? Are you guys majorly on cloud or hybrid environments, or what's it called? Infrastructure environment, like on-site infrastructure environments, depending on your business, how your business works. And you might also want to check, how do people raise false positive? False positive means a solution is detecting a vulnerability and this is not true. That's like a false positive, right? How easy it is to integrate, integration process. You can also look at the user administration process. Can you log on remotely from anywhere? Do you want like a box to be delivered to your data center? You want a cloud? I mean, just look for different features, right? And you create like RFP proposal. Can your vulnerability scan do this? Can it scan both web, network, endpoints, servers, Linux, right? Yes. Can it provide proper recommendation? I mean, would this vulnerability solution give like a detailed recommendation on how to fix these vulnerabilities? Because there are some tools that even after scan, you still be want to go and be doing research on CV 2021-91 on your own. And you have to go online and start doing research. And some tools will give you detailed recommendation process. And that just kind of make your work easy for you. And you don't have to do much research before you do that. So depending on what you want, I mean, it's something that would make your work really easy for you, right? And then you evaluate them based on that technical questions. And then POC, proof of concept, proof of value is, they would kind of give your organization like a 30 days trial where you would, run like a test scan, something like that for 30 days or 7 days, depending on their policies with those vendors. And then you rate these three vulnerabilities vendors on this RFP that you've created, right? And then you can give them score. Oh, I think I prefer this because this gives me their dashboard is easier. I think I prefer this. I like it, how it's kind of, the threat level, it explains the recommendation, how it gives me some access to links, how you can fix it, depending on what you want, right? And then once you rate them, you can give them 1, 2, 3. Even if you think, so like I said, you have server ABC or vendor ABC, vendor B kind of gives you the technical whatever, you're happy with that. Vendor C came second and vendor A came first and came third. You wouldn't just say, because vendor B is what gives you what you want, and then you go with vendor B. For you to have said for you to have chosen 3 vendors at first, that means you are telling management that you can either go with the 3 vendors, right? Because in an organization, you don't just look at the technical application, you also look at the financial application. And then what I do is I've rated vendor A first, and I rated vendor B first, vendor C second, and vendor A third. Say for instance, you even did POC with 10 vendors, you have to choose at least 3 that you think you are kind of comfortable with, and then submit to your stakeholders. And then the procurement department or whatsoever department might be the one to now ask them for prices. So for 10,000 endpoints, how much would you give us? They do the business negotiation, and they are the one that will now determine, okay, we'll go with vendor B or we'll go with vendor A, depending on the price. Because if somebody is saying, come and pay £1 million for a particular guy, another one is saying, come and pay 800,000 pounds. Do you think business will go with £1 million over 800 pounds? That kind of a thing. So it's like a cost benefit analysis. You might want to do that for them, or your risk department will do a cost benefit analysis for them, and then they go with one vendor. So in a nutshell, do a POC, proof of concept and proof of value. Are you going to get value for what you want, right? And then you choose any vendor based on that. I hope I've not
Thank you so much.
that.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So before we move to the last session is risk, and then I want to show us something on my PC for the risk assessment. They'll call it a day. Risk assessment. Okay, I took this from internet. I did not bother to define. Sorry, I'm not a content creator, but I Googled it and I saw this, but I will just explain what it does. So IT risk assessment is a process of analyzing potential threats and vulnerability. Can you see what I mentioned about risk? Risk is what? Threats and vulnerability. So the assessment is you analyzing that potential threat or vulnerabilities to your IT system to establish what loss you might expect to incur if certain events happen. And its objective is to help you achieve optimal security at a reasonable cost. I think I mentioned cost benefits right now. I would explain. Don't worry. Let me just quickly go through that and explain. So a typical, I also uploaded this from internet, sorry. Yeah. A typical risk assessment is, like I said, I think I also mentioned something about likelihood. You can see likelihood, you can see impact, correct. I think this is best way to explain this. Imagine I've done copy and paste and I'm looking at how do I explain this for you? How do I explain this? Copy and paste is not good, I guess. I couldn't sit down and create my content. Anyway, say for instance, a vulnerability, let's use the second one. A firewall is configured properly and has good DDoS mitigation. A firewall is configured properly and has good DDoS mitigation. That means the vulnerability is low, right? Because you've configured the firewall properly, and DDoS is double denial of service attack. DDoS, or they call it DOS, denial of service attack anyway. And denial of service attack is somebody trying to, an example would be a malicious actor or a threat actor trying to bring down your web application, for instance. And I think I explained something around that the first class. Say for instance, Nigerian government is saying, Nigerian government wants to provide 50,000 job applications. 50,000 youths a job, right? And then they opened a portal today and they said everybody should apply. And because a lot of people are unemployed and they really want to get this job, e.g. Empower, right? They really want to get this job, and everybody, and they said it will close 12 a.m. 2nd of May. And then everybody is trying to make a request to this Empower site. If the bandwidth of that Empower site is not sufficient enough to accommodate many requests, right, it will definitely bring down the website. That's like a legitimate one. An illegitimate, like a malicious attempt would be somebody's trying to send a lot of HTTP requests to your online banking application, for instance, and you don't have a firewall in place that that kind of say if a request is coming from a particular location or a particular IP address, or from there is something we call command and control servers used for botnets, right? And you did not kind of say if an IP or if a request is coming from command and control servers IP or domain, please filter it out. Don't let it reach our internal server, for instance. And you don't have that DDoS protection in place, right? It means anybody, rat, cat, can have access to your internal network. So an organization has a firewall in place that filter some requests that are not legitimate to prevent DDoS attack. DDoS attack means you're not able to reach your server when you needed to reach it, that kind of a thing. And so they already have a DDoS this thing in place, then the vulnerability is low because we have a DDoS mitigation in place. However, the threat is a malicious human, like an hacker, will definitely say try to perform a DDoS attack, right? Will still try to bring down a particular server or to come into your organization and say, for example, your mail server or your database server. That means that threat is still there. E.g., you have a database that has like a PII or important information like credit card information of users. That means the threat actor is interested in getting all this credit card information or getting some confidential information about your clients or about your customers. So the threat is high, right? And what is the asset in this case? I was using an online banking or a database server, for instance, and the asset in this case is what is the website. That means somebody is trying to bring down your website such that legitimate people cannot log in, right? but you have a firewall in place that filters unnecessary requests. So if the threat is high and the vulnerability is low, right? That means if you do high times low, you might get something around medium. And that means this makes the risk to be what? To be medium. I think I'm not feeling this. I'm not feeling this example anyway. But the impact in this case is that if a DDoS attack affects your website, definitely it will not be available. Your website also will become unavailable. And that makes the impact really high, right? And likelihood in this case is DDoS was discovered once in 2 years. Oh, no, I'm not good in explaining this risk. No, this would not work for me. Sorry, let's forget this example. I'm going to use the one I'm sure of. Okay. Erase what I've said about all this. Okay, don't erase everything in a way, but just keep that and put it somewhere, hang it somewhere. Don't use it. I would use my own example that I have on my PC. I think this is a bad idea. Lifting this image from an internet is a bad idea, a very bad idea. It's a very bad idea. Don't worry, I would explain. Okay, I would explain. I will share with you like a real life some that I normally use and use that to explain. So let me quickly explain this before I move to my PC. Sorry about that, guys. So IT risks has different types of mitigation. There are 4 types of risk mitigation. We have risk acceptance, we have risk avoidance, we have mitigating risk, and we have transferring risk. So you see accept, avoid, mitigate, and transfer, right? And you've performed a vulnerability assessment. Like I said, e.g., there was a bug in your application or a defect in your application and you were trying to fix it. And you've talked to your application owner and they said, if they fix this particular vulnerabilities and this particular bug, it will break something because it has a lot of dependent application, right? And you don't want that fixing of that bug to break your application. What would you do at that moment is for you to kind of analyze the risk. Even if your vulnerability assessment plan is rating the severity, maybe the security, the CVSS score is 9.6, is critical. But your developer is saying, if we fix this thing right now, it will affect our online banking application websites, right? And then what will you do in that case? It's to bring out your risk or you talk to GRC department, but you as a person, you need to understand how risk work. And then what would you do is, do you want to accept this risk? Accepting the risk means, okay, even if an attacker exploits this bug, how would this impact our organization? The impact might be low. Or the risk might be something around, like you have to look at the cost value, the value of this risk. So I want to go back to this website. Sorry, like I said, keep it. I might go back to it. This website, for instance, if you don't have a firewall in place, right, and a DDoS attack happened on your website, and then your website becomes unavailable, how would this affect your organization? What is the potential loss in terms of value? And these people are saying the potential loss in terms of value is $10,000 per hour of downtime. Is this something an organization can actually, can they accept this kind of risk? Is a no. Like they cannot accept it because this is definitely high on I mean, in terms, it's definitely a big cost in the business, so they can't accept this kind of risk, right? So risk acceptance is what risk are you comfortable in accepting? And I will show something. I'm trying to look for an example. So you can actually rate your risk as low, medium, high. If the risk is low, like you have a risk value of say 2 or 3, you can accept the risk, that kind of a thing, right? Risk avoidance is, at first, we don't even have a website. Let's avoid the risk. So we don't even want to have a website at all. So because we don't have a website, then DDoS cannot even happen on us. I mean, there's nothing that can happen because we don't have a website. We don't even want to take the risk of, we don't even want to take the risk of a DDoS attack, for instance, and then want to avoid the risk totally. Another example would be, I don't want us to use Java, old Mozilla Firefox, because if old Mozilla Firefox has a vulnerability, we cannot fix it. So don't let us have this in place at all. That is you avoiding risk, right? Risk mitigation is, like I said, you have a bug or defect in your application. Let's mitigate it. We want to fix this bug, right? Or another example would be, if you cannot mitigate the risk, can we kind of find like a compensating control, like something to compensate the risk? E.g., the website should not be accessible on the internet. Let's bring it on the intranet. That means only people within our network can access this particular website. Even though you cannot fix that particular bug at the time, but you've mitigated it by moving the website away from DMZ, like the demilitarized zone, or away from the internet, and you bring it you bring it inside within your network. That's like mitigation. Or you fix the risk, you fix the bug, that's mitigation. A risk transfer is, let me now go back to this. A risk transfer is, look at this example for instance. That means I will still use my firewall. If your website goes down today, it will cost you not 10,000, but it will cost you $100 million per hour. And your company cannot afford that. What they do at that moment is you transfer the risk, you insure your website, like an insurance means you've transferred a risk. So that means if anything happens to my website today, because you've paid for an insurance fee at first, your insurance fee would cover that particular risk, and they will bring it up, or they are ready to bear the cost. So acceptance risk is, okay, this risk will not affect us, this bug will not affect us according to your risk rating. I've accepted the risk. Avoid risk is, we don't even want to have this process in place. I don't even want to have a website at all. Mitigation is, let's fix this bug. Even though we cannot fix this bug, let's kind of find a compensating control. Let's see how we can prevent this attack from happening, DDoS attack, right? Or let's even buy a firewall, or let's bring this website within the network. We don't want anybody to have access to it. Transfer is, if this risk happens, if a bug is being exploited, it's going to cost us a lot of money that organization cannot even afford, then let's insure this website. Let's transfer the risk to an insurance company. They call it cyber insure. And if you see, transferring cyber risk is most often done through the purchase of cyber insurance and through third-party solution, which accept the risk as part of their business services. You transfer the risk. Those are the 4 key things I need to know when it comes to IT risk or cyber risk: risk acceptance, risk avoidance, risk mitigation, and risk transfer. Any question before I change my computer on risk?
Okay, sorry, I just want to ask, so this cyber insurance is like an outsourcing company?
Yes, this cyber insurance is like an insurance company that has to do with cybersecurity risk.
Okay.
Yes.
The example of such?
An example would be, I can't think of an example in my head, but let me kind of relate it to, say for example, you purchase a car, right? And you insure your car. That means if anything happens to your car today, an insurance company is ready to bear the cost. So like an insurance company that kind of deals with anything that happened. Okay, I don't know if I have like a company or an organization in mind, However, is you contracting a part of your business. Like if this part of my business is affected, I cannot afford to fix this. So you kind of insure that part of your business, like to an insurance company. But because it's an IT related or cybersecurity related issue, then you call it a cyber insurance. So it's also just saying car insurance, cybersecurity insurance, but you are giving it out to an insurance company. Does that explain it?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other question? Okay, like I said, I'm going to share this screen with us. So I think I use this document to configure what I was saying around how you can add a particular DWORD file to your registry, how you can enable user account control. I use this document. You might want to look at the link. The first one and the second one. I got it from Tenable. You might want to read it. But if you don't have time, you can just go through my process and quickly get your assignment done before Friday. And then you can always come back to this. Yeah, so this is the end of the class. However, stay connected. Let me stop sharing and connect on my computer to show us cybersecurity